Welcome to a haunting and mysterious Thanksgiving story you may have never heard before. Behind the familiar image of turkey dinners and family gatherings lies a dark past, a forgotten tale of betrayal and tragedy. In the shadows of the Plymouth woods, restless spirits linger, never finding peace, and on the eve of Thanksgiving, they return, a chilling warning from the beyond. Tonight, brace yourself for a story not meant for the faint of heart. Remember, what you're about to hear isn't just a legend, it's a ghostly echo of history. Are you ready? Let me know if you'd like any further adjustments. Chapter 1. The Summoning of the Past. Thanksgiving. In America, this word conjures warmth, tables heaped with turkey and mashed potatoes, families laughing together, and the comfort of home. But deep within the forests of New England, on those chilly early winter nights, there are stories that no one dares mention when talking about Thanksgiving. The people of Plymouth, Massachusetts, have heard whispers of a very different holiday, one not filled with joy and gratitude but with the cries of lost spirits, of forgotten souls buried beneath land stained with blood from hundreds of years past. The official history of Thanksgiving begins in 1621, when the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag celebrated the first harvest in New England. For many Americans, it's a story of peace, gratitude, and unity between two different worlds. But for those who dare to listen closely, another tale emerges, a secret hidden within the faded pages of history. In the damp cold of Plymouth's oldest homes, elderly families tell the story of the first Thanksgiving, but in a very different way, a tale that never made it to history books. On that night, while the Pilgrims celebrated under the firelight, the Wampanoag quietly slipped away, as if they knew that peace was temporary, that the settlers would never stop at just that. By 1637, the dark truth began to surface. After the Pilgrims claimed the land, conflicts grew fiercer and bloodier. The bloodiest night took place on the Pequot tribe's land, where colonial soldiers surrounded a native settlement and burned it to the ground. Men, women, children, all perished. That massacre left more than bodies. It created furious souls that would never find peace. To celebrate this victory, the settlers declared it the first Thanksgiving, but instead of gratitude, it became a declaration of war upon spirits who could never move on. Since that night, every year on the eve of Thanksgiving, the elders of Plymouth often stay inside. They lock their doors tight, draw the curtains, making sure no light escapes outside. They know that something waits in the darkness, something from the past that refuses to rest. Young people may brush it off as superstition, but those who dared to venture out on that cold night all sense something undeniably real. They say that on Thanksgiving Eve, if you stand at the edge of Plymouth woods at midnight, you'll hear soft footsteps, breaths that sound like whispers from deep within the trees. Sometimes, shadowy figures flicker among the trunks, appearing briefly, then vanishing into the mist, like spirits from a distant world that the living should never disturb. One night, on the eve of Thanksgiving, a curious young man tested his courage. He lit a candle and walked to the edge of Plymouth woods, once the land of the Pequot tribe, and stood alone in the biting cold of winter. At first, there was only silence, a dreadful silence as if the entire forest held its breath. Then he heard it, a faint whisper, like a song from afar, voices belonging to people he couldn't see but knew didn't belong to this world. Trembling, he prepared to leave, but then his candle flickered out. In the darkness, he felt an icy breath on his neck, and a whisper sounded right behind him. The living should not be here. He spun around but saw nothing, only darkness enveloping him and a chill piercing his skin, as though the very earth beneath him was speaking. He never told anyone about that night, but each Thanksgiving since, he glimpses dark figures passing by his window, as if they're still waiting for something from the living. And that is the truth: Thanksgiving hides in darkness. The Wampanoag warned that once you take something from their land, the trespassers would never escape the curse. And to this day, that curse lingers in the wind, in the frigid New England nights, awaiting anyone brave enough to tempt fate. So, would you dare step outside tonight, on the eve of Thanksgiving, to listen to the whispers of spirits seeking justice? But be careful, because once you hear them, they may follow you forever. Chapter 2. The Blood-Stained Handshake. The story of the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag tribe has long been told as a symbol of friendship and gratitude. But beneath that surface lies a dark truth that the people of Plymouth prefer never to revisit. In 1621, when the Pilgrims first set foot on this land, they were strangers, lost, starving, and clinging to survival. That first brutal winter nearly wiped them from the map. Standing between life and death, they were forced to seek help from anyone who would listen. The Wampanoag, in an act of kindness, taught these strangers how to farm, hunt, and survive in the harsh wilderness. But peace doesn't last forever. As Pilgrim settlements grew, they wanted more than just help from the Wampanoag, they wanted land. The Thanksgiving story traces back to those years. But it never ended with a feast. Behind each blessing and prayer was a simmering resentment, a growing hostility that waited to erupt. In 1637, a massacre occurred on the land of the Pequot tribe in Connecticut, where colonists nearly eradicated the entire tribe. It's said that on the night before the massacre, the Pequot's war drums beat deep within the forest, a silent warning echoing through the night. But the Pilgrims felt no fear. They saw it as a challenge, a sign that it was time to cleanse the land. At dawn, the colonist soldiers surrounded and burned the Pequot settlement. Flames shot into the sky, lighting up the heavens as the agonized cries of women and children pierced the night. No one survived that wrath. The fallen weren't merely killed, they were obliterated, their souls never at peace. The tale of that massacre never makes it onto Thanksgiving greeting cards. But it lives on in the memories of survivors, the Wampanoag and Pequot who watched their families perish. To celebrate this bloody victory, Massachusetts colonists declared it a day of Thanksgiving, not in gratitude for peace, but as a twisted thankfulness for their enemies' demise. This was the true first Thanksgiving, a holiday born from blood and betrayal. After the massacre, the remaining Pequot and Wampanoag were forced to retreat, leaving their ancestral lands in the hands of invaders. But legend has it that even as they fled, they vowed never to let the colonists rest peacefully. They left behind a curse, a chilling promise that each Thanksgiving, the spirits of the slaughtered would return to seek justice. People believe the spirits of the Pequot, those who died in the flames that night, still wander the shadows, carrying the stench of burning flesh and the desperate cries of the women and children who perished. Bound to this land, they are condemned to wait for someone who can hear their call. Residents of Plymouth say that on the eve of Thanksgiving, if you stand on the old Pequot land, you will sense their presence. Many have sworn they've seen dark figures in the night, with eyes like endless voids brimming with rage. Those brave enough to approach this land at night report feeling a bone-chilling wind that pierces their skin, carrying the scent of blood and fire. It's no ordinary breeze, it's the breath of those spirits, tethered forever to the land, desperate for justice. Generations have passed, but each Thanksgiving season, the elders of the Wampanoag tribe still hold ceremonies to honor those lost. For them, this is not a time for joyous celebration but a day of mourning, a reminder of the betrayal and bloodshed suffered by their ancestors. They call it the Day of Mourning, a day to remember those wronged and silenced. They say that on the eve of the Day of Mourning, the drums of the Pequot warriors echo through the forest, a reminder that they would never surrender. The drumbeats aren't loud, but clear and steady, a signal that their spirits are still there, waiting, unyielding. The tales of drums echoing through the forest aren't just myths. Local residents near Plymouth's woods say that every year on Thanksgiving Eve, as dusk falls and shadows creep into the trees, the faint rhythm of drums returns. Heavy and sorrowful, no one ever sees who beats the drums. But the sound is unmistakable, it carries a message, a curse that has never faded. Those daring enough to enter the forest that night return with haunted looks in their eyes. They speak of shadowy warriors standing among the trees, faces etched with fury, silently watching each step. Some claim to hear whispers in the wind, voices of the murdered calling out names of the trespassers, a reminder that justice will one day be served. With the morning light, the forest falls silent, the drums vanish, leaving behind only the quiet land once home to native tribes. But day or night, the people of Plymouth remember the bloody events and the restless souls that can never find peace. Each Thanksgiving, as families gather around tables, the drums continue to beat in the woods, a quiet reminder of the cost of betrayal and the lingering wrath of those who lost everything. Chapter 3. Spirits of the Land of the Dead. The tale of restless spirits haunting the lands of Plymouth has become a deep-rooted part of local legend. Especially around Thanksgiving, it's believed that the souls of the Pequot and Wampanoag tribes, those who sacrificed their lives defending their land, still wander somewhere between the forests and untouched fields of New England. Though they are not visible in daily life, something stirs in the darkness on cold winter nights, a chilling reminder of the injustice they endured. The native people call it the graveyard of the living, a place where the dead can reclaim fragments of their memories by haunting those who dare trespass. A particularly eerie legend tells of those who enter the Plymouth woods on the night before Thanksgiving encountering the keeper, a native spirit with a hollow face and empty eyes, forever warding off intruders and reminding them of the price of greed. As night falls, darkness spreads like a thick velvet curtain, engulfing the forest and fields. On these nights, the locals shut their doors, draw the curtains, and light fires to keep safe. Although some say that spirits long since dead pay no mind to flames. They have their own ways of entering your home, to stand just behind you unnoticed, to remind you that Thanksgiving is not a joyful day for all. One year, on the night before Thanksgiving, a group of curious young people decided to challenge this curse. Armed with flashlights, they ventured into the forest, laughing off the old tales and dismissing the warnings from the town elders. None of them believed a curse could harm them, until they ventured deep into the woods and found themselves lost. At first, there was only silence, an oppressive silence that felt suffocating. Then they began hearing soft whispers, like the sound of the wind but steady and rhythmic, as though someone were speaking from a great distance yet drawing closer with every step. One of them aimed his flashlight toward a tree trunk, and in the beam of light, he saw the faint outline of a figure, its face shrouded in shadow. With only the eyes visible, staring deep like twin black holes, a bone-chilling breeze swept past, and the figure seemed to vanish. But the air grew dense, heavy, threatening. Fear began to creep through the group, and they turned to run back the way they came. But one of them, a young man named Sam, heard a whisper close to his ear. "Intruders must pay." Sam felt an icy hand on his shoulder, the chill seeping into his skin. He turned and saw the keeper, a native spirit with a pale face, sunken eyes, and a penetrating gaze. In an instant, Sam felt himself being pulled down, as though an invisible force was dragging him into the earth, where darkness encircled him. The next morning, his friends found Sam in a state of shock, his eyes blank as if he had seen something unimaginable. He wouldn't speak, only muttering about eyes watching him. They brought Sam back to town, but from that night on, he felt constantly followed, cold eyes watching him from the shadows. And sometimes, as night fell, he heard the whispers of the spirits he had dared disturb. To the native people, Thanksgiving is not a day of gratitude or family togetherness but a blood-stained reminder of their ancestors' suffering. On the night before Thanksgiving, they hold the Day of Mourning, a ceremony to pray for the departed souls but also to protect themselves from the curses they know still linger. The young people in the tribe are told about the vengeful spirits of those who lost their families, their land, and their lives, all because of the invaders' greed. Elders say that if you light a candle and place it in your window on the night before Thanksgiving, you may hear the murmur of the spirits. They come not to harm but to demand justice, to remind that this land was once theirs, and their spirits remain. Both the native people and later settlers in Plymouth know that Thanksgiving night is a night of spirits, and they dare not trespass. The whispers, the shadows, the chill in the air are reminders from the other side that the past cannot be entirely escaped. Even if the curtains are drawn and doors locked, no one can stop the ghosts from returning to reclaim what was taken. Sam's story spread through the town, and since then, anyone considering trespassing in the Plymouth woods has second thoughts. They know that every Thanksgiving night, the stillness of the woods will be broken by the sound of invisible footsteps and whispers from the heart of the darkness. Locals now avoid the woods whenever Thanksgiving approaches, for though no one can say how many angry spirits still linger, they all feel it, that each step into those woods is a challenge, and that the spirits only need one reason to rise, to return and reclaim what was lost. So, would you dare enter Plymouth woods? Thanksgiving night is near, and the spirits wait, just one misstep away from awakening the darkness forever. Chapter 4. The Thanksgiving Curse. The Stories of Drums in the Woods. white figures drifting through the night, and the curse cast by Pequot and Wampanoag spirits are embedded deeply in the memories of Plymouth's people. But the most terrifying curse doesn't lurk only at the edge of the forest or over the fields. It has found its way into the homes of those who dared to trespass. Every year on Thanksgiving Eve, many families in town sense the presence of something not from this world. Something that seems to be waiting for its chance to reclaim justice. Legend has it that the Thanksgiving curse didn't just settle over the land of Plymouth but spread across New England, touching even the families tied to those who took part in the massacre long ago. While they may try to live peacefully, anyone with ties to the Pilgrim settlers is affected by this curse. The fire of resentment from restless spirits still smolders, awaiting the chance to pull the guilty into darkness. Ada, one of the oldest residents of Plymouth, often shared stories about the strange happenings in her family on Thanksgiving Eve. Events that have spanned generations. As a descendant of a Pilgrim involved in the Pequot Massacre, her family has long been haunted by strange occurrences on this night. Ada called it, the Night of the Ghosts. She recalled that on one Thanksgiving Eve, many years ago when she was still a child, her family had a normal dinner just like any other family. But after everyone went to bed, she was woken up by an unusual sound. At first, it was just a faint whisper, like the wind howling through the cracks. But soon, the whisper grew clearer, as if someone were murmuring right in her ear. "We cannot rest." Opening her eyes, she saw a dark figure slipping past her bedroom door. She curled up under her blanket, her heart pounding, unable to utter a single prayer. The door creaked open slowly, and in the dim light, she saw a face, dark, enraged eyes that seemed to pierce through time and space. It was the face of a native spirit, a soul from centuries ago. But its anger was as alive as ever. The people of Plymouth believe that on Thanksgiving Eve, if a candle suddenly goes out for no reason, it's a sign of the spirit's presence. They say that if you're brave enough to relight it and look into the flame, you may see the face of someone long gone. They do not come to frighten but to remind you of the cost of betrayal and bottomless greed. One night in an old house by the woods, the Davis family sat down for a cozy Thanksgiving dinner. But as the clock struck 11:59, the only candle on the table suddenly went out. Mrs. Davis, a believer in old legends, decided to relight the candle to ward off the spirits. As the flame flickered to life, the family sat in shock, their mouths agape as the shadow of a man appeared on the wall. His eyes were two dark, hollow pits, his face pale and sorrowful. And then, his voice filled the room as if carried on a breeze. "You took everything from us, our land, our families, our lives. Now, it's your turn." No one dared move. The shadow vanished. But from that night on, they could always feel something watching them. Every year on Thanksgiving Eve, their candle would go out precisely at 11:59. No matter how hard they tried, they could not escape the bone-chilling cold and the feeling of being followed. That year, a group of historians decided to explore Plymouth on Thanksgiving Eve to uncover the truth of the curse. They set up camp at the edge of the woods, turning on their camping lights and sharing ghost stories. But as the clock struck midnight, the air shifted, the wind stopped, the atmosphere thickened, and the temperature dropped sharply. One of them, a man named Tom, ventured deeper into the woods in search of evidence of the spirits. He didn't go far, but just moments later, the others heard a blood-curdling scream. They ran to find Tom kneeling on the ground, muttering incoherently. When they got closer, he looked up at them, his eyes empty and wide with horror, and said, "They're here. They're coming to take it all back." When they left the woods, Tom was never the same. He constantly spoke of eyes in the darkness, of spirits he'd seen among the trees. Spirits who had been left behind, never able to leave. Every year, around Thanksgiving, Tom felt their presence, spirits who never left, who patiently awaited their time for revenge. The Thanksgiving curse is more than an old tale. It's an unending burden for the descendants of the Pilgrims. Plymouth residents know that the souls of the Pequot and Wampanoag still wander, as if their memories have seeped into the soil, the forests, and even the air itself. On Thanksgiving Eve, when the moon hangs over New England and darkness envelops every corner, they know it's not mere silence. It's the spirits lying in wait, ready to emerge from the shadows and remind the living that the past cannot be erased. And this year, if you find a candle in your home going out on its own, remember, it may be a reminder from beyond that everything has a price. Chapter 5. Warnings from the past. Thanksgiving draws near, and as darkness slowly falls over Plymouth, the silence of the ancient woods and barren fields holds a dark secret, a tale no one dares to mention aloud. The townsfolk have grown accustomed to legends of curses, of spirits who never rest, and of the chilling warnings they carry. Every year, on the night before Thanksgiving, the families of Plymouth stay awake, vigilant, waiting for signs from the beyond. It's the night when the boundary between the living and the dead becomes the thinnest, when the spirits of the Pequot and Wampanoag people have the chance to return, wandering through darkened streets and forests like mournful reminders of the cost of greed and betrayal. Martha, a longtime resident of the town, recalls an eerie night from her youth on a Thanksgiving Eve that chilled the town to its core. A family from out of town had recently moved in and decided to throw a grand celebration on the very night before Thanksgiving. Unaware they were disturbing spirits that should have been left undisturbed, the family scoffed at tales of hauntings, throwing a loud, raucous party that filled the neighborhood with laughter and music. But suddenly, in the middle of the night, the laughter abruptly stopped. The house fell into an unsettling silence. At first, neighbors thought they had gone to bed, but a strange light appeared in an upstairs window, a dim glow as if filtered through mist. A man from the town went up to investigate. As he reached the front door, he heard whispers coming from inside, a chorus of overlapping voices, like the cries of hundreds. Trembling, he stepped back and looked up. There, he saw the shadow of a woman dressed in traditional native attire, her eyes piercing the walls, staring directly at him. The next morning, the family left town in a hurry without a word. The house was left empty, and no one dared go near it again. It's said that on Thanksgiving Eve, if you pass by that house, you might see a shadow by the window, blank-eyed, waiting for someone to come close and hear her tale of betrayal. The darkness of the past still lingers in every street and field of Plymouth, and the spirits who refuse to rest never abandon the chance to return. Native Pequot and Wampanoag people say that on Thanksgiving Eve, the Pilgrims who murdered their families and tribes return with blood-stained hands and vengeance in their eyes, searching for justice in a world that has forgotten them. Every year, on the night before Thanksgiving, the people of Plymouth tell of strange happenings around town, candles snuffing out on their own, the soft yet unmistakable sound of breathing behind them, white figures glimpsed on empty streets. It's said that if anyone lights a candle and places it by their door, they might catch the face of a lost soul flickering in the flame. But it's no greeting, it's a warning that every betrayal comes at a cost. A town legend holds that anyone who still possesses an item from the early Pilgrim settlers will be haunted forever by native spirits. One family kept an old clock, a family heirloom from Pilgrim ancestors. They say that every Thanksgiving Eve, the clock stops exactly at 11:59 p.m., the moment when the line between life and death is thinnest. One night, the family's youngest daughter, Lucy, decided to stay up and see if the clock would really stop. As the minute hand moved toward midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway, slow and heavy, like someone approaching. She took a deep breath and turned to look, but no one was there. When she looked back at the clock, Lucy saw that the hands had indeed stopped, but not at midnight. It stopped at 11:59, and in the silence, she heard a chilling whisper, "We are still here." Lucy never told anyone about that night, but from then on, she always sensed someone watching her. Every year on Thanksgiving Eve, she felt a cold gaze following her every step, a reminder that the spirits never give up, that the betrayed and the slain still wait in the shadows. Thanksgiving, to many, is a time of gratitude, of love, of family. But for Plymouth, for families with the blood of the Pilgrims in their veins, it's a reminder of a dark past that will never be forgotten. The native spirits still return, bearing a warning that their lands, families, and lives were stolen from them, and that one day, they will reclaim it all. On Thanksgiving Eve, as the candles fade and darkness closes in, the people of Plymouth feel the presence of those spirits, the ghosts who will never rest, waiting quietly in the shadows for the day when justice will be served. And that is the story of Thanksgiving's dark past, a holiday that is not just about gratitude, but also a warning from restless spirits. The people of Plymouth know well that each Thanksgiving season, the darkness carries whispers of those who have been forgotten. Remember, some stories need to be told so that the past is never repeated. If you're brave enough, light a candle tonight, and listen closely, perhaps someone from beyond is whispering to you. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to adjust for the narration.